Thank you for joining us to our showroom, our newly refurbished showroom, and to spend the afternoon with us today in Clerkenwell Design Week. So we are modulyss. We are designers and manufacturers of flooring solutions, but we take that very seriously. And with that comes a responsibility. And because the floors, and they are part of the buildings, and the buildings, they shape the way we learn, we act, we connect with other people. So, and that's why we want to be part of the discussions that they are shaping the future of design and architecture. And we organize regularly what we call modulyss talks, which is a forum where experts can share those ideas and those trends, and no better occasion to launch the new session of the modulyss talks than Clerkenwell Design Week. So today we are very privileged to have Becky White for Universal Design Studio. I met Becky a couple of months ago, and I think we are here up for a treat where she's going to share her experience over a decade designing environments that they can transition seamlessly depending on the elements and the occasions that we are working, from retail to hospitality or workspace. So without more delay, Becky, the floor is yours.
Thank you all so much for coming today to listen to me speak. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about hybrid design in general, and then I'm going to go into speaking more specifically about hybrid design in the spaces that we have designed at Universal Design Studio. So I thought I'd start by asking the question, what is a hybrid? Historically, where I probably would have asked Google the question, what is a hybrid, I asked ChatGPT, which gave me the answer, something made by combining two different elements, a mix that blends the characteristics or functions of two distinct things, but I think that can also mean more than just two. So it's worth just starting to kind of zoom out, talking about hybrids in general at a kind of city scale. So hybridization in cities has kind of come full circle. Throughout history, the value of land and overlapping functions has been intrinsically linked together. A long time ago, in the ancient times where everything was set within the walls of a city, everything like housing, shops, workplaces were often kind of squashed together and stacked on top of one another, and there was little distinction between spaces. And then during the Industrial Revolution, everything kind of broke free from the city walls and spilled out. So affordable land and cars meant people could travel beyond the realms of the city. And I think probably modernist city planning, there's a great example of this is Brasilia, which glorified the idea of a divided city into very neat defined areas like work, live and play. Today we've come full circle and the modern city is kind of jumbled up again. It's high density and there's this mix of culture, business and homes all in the same area. So what defines a good hybrid? I think the best way to think about a hybrid is to think of an existing model and something that you can build on to make better. So a really good example of this is the car industry, where they've used hybrids to introduce new concepts. But the idea is that it's very much rooted in the established system that already exists. So maybe when the new technology hasn't quite reached its potential, the old system can kick in and essentially provide a temporary solution until the new technology fully replaces the hybrid. And we are experiencing hybridization in many areas of our modern lives. Our lives are becoming hybrid in many different ways. So the use of technology means that our private and work lives are becoming more blurred. We can now work anywhere, anytime, and because of the pandemic, that's very much accelerated that hybrid working modes. Technology has allowed us to access a wide range of different resources, which has meant it's freed up our time, allowing us to have other passions and interests, which has given rise to the so-called slash people. So this idea that you could be an engineer slash yoga teacher or an architect slash blogger. We've kind of seeing these non-linear careers and a wider range of different identities. And of course, there's the hybridization of another kind happening, and that is between the physical and our virtual selves. Another what else technology is giving rise to is this idea of a sharing economy. So what started with the sharing of music and cars is now spreading to people's homes, clothes, and even pets. So we're in the process of fundamentally giving up this idea of owning things. And in a sense, that's great because it means that you can have more options and more opportunities to things that you wouldn't typically have access to. We're seeing an increase in the merging of business models and sectors, from a cafe that offers bike repairs to a butcher's that offers that transforms into a restaurant to a cafe that also hosts a run club. This is an example of a project that we worked in King's Cross. It's Radio Hair Salon, but it also functions as an event space, a gallery space, and it also does really good coffee. So I guess maybe digging in a little bit to hybrid spaces, we as a studio have divided them into these two different typologies. So type A being something that a space can host multiple functions simultaneously. So the idea that these activities or functions might happen at the same time. And then type B, which is this idea that the space transforms. So it might have one activity on one day or transfer to a different activity later on in the day, or that could happen over a week, a year, or even months. So type A sees these activities happening side by side, which can create surprising combinations and really inspire us. Take, for example, this project in Pittsburgh called Tons. It's a multifunctional venue designed for the style enthusiast, so someone who's interested in architecture, art, and fashion. So the space kind of reflects that, I guess, in a way. You've got this very raw industrial space, but it's mixed with beautiful artworks, vintage furnitures. You really have this crossbreed of something that's super refined versus something that feels like an installation. There is also workspaces and photography studios, and they're framed nicely in these kind of wide apertures where you can see these multiple activities happening at one time. Through to type B, which is more similar to a table. So a table is very, very specific, but it can be very, very versatile. So it allows for a multiple use through its very fixed shape. It's a fixed materiality, fixed height, fixed size, but it's something very reliable and familiar, and it's easy to react and make use of. And there isn't much you can't do at a table. So what is the value of these hybrid spaces, and why are they important? So this crossover of unlikely groups can have a really good social and human benefits. This cross-pollination can encourage open-mindedness, and it can really enrich people's professional and personal experiences. This is, the reference here is Vitsu Factory in Leamington Spa, and they share the factory with a company called Motion House, who are a dance studio. And although these two parties are seemingly very contrasting and different, they actually have lots of shared values as companies. They have shared values about openness and community, and every single day they sit and have lunch together. And the sharing of these two spaces can be mutually and economically beneficial for both parties. So shared facilities can obviously mean you can split your bills, which is great. And also you have an extended audience reach. So two companies coming together, you then get the additional audience from the other party, which can lead to lots of opportunities. And this can really future-proof the success of a business. So take, for example, this skate cafe in Amsterdam, which caters for diners, skaters, and events. The juxtaposition of the two activities can really keep the business dynamic so that throughout the year, the day, or the week, it keeps changing and it keeps evolving. And of course, as you guys probably all know, one of the biggest problems we face today is the existential threat of climate change. As architects and designers, we play a really crucial role in ensuring that we can re-establish a different role with the natural world. So through adaptive architecture, we can create smarter and more sensible solutions to use what we already have. So that might be using existing buildings with captured carbon, but that can also be creating multifunctional spaces, which really maximize spatial efficiencies. And I guess just to kind of summarize on the points of why hybrid spaces are really beneficial is that once we're kind of freed from that singular requirement, hybrid spaces can become really beautiful, colourful landscapes. By setting up these open, generous conditions, we don't know what the result might be, but it allows for moments of serendipity, and I think the result can be something that's truly authentic and original. Again, the example shown on the screen is the Maggie Centres. For anyone who doesn't know about them, they're medical facilities that provide homely and non-clinical environments for those suffering cancer and the families of those people. So these light-flooded spaces and communal gardens really blur the lines between healthcare and the domestic, creating environments that are both therapeutic and superhumane. So now I'm going to talk through some of the hybrid spaces that we have designed at Universal Design Studio and I've worked on at my time since I've been there. So this is a bit of an old one, but I'm going to start by talking about Ace Hotel in Shoreditch, as it's a super important project for us. Sadly, it's now a slightly different hotel. It's got new ownership called 100 Shoreditch. But interestingly, a lot of the features are similar. So a lot of the kind of large architectural moves and the spatial layouts, which I guess in a sense is a kind of new kind of hybrid in a way, our design with the new design. So one of the traditional moves that we did when we were designing the Ace Hotel was opening up the facade to the local community. And we did this by creating a facade that was activated with different and unusual functions not typically found in hotels. So the idea being that these activities are inviting and they create soft boundaries for people to kind of come in and enter into the space. For example, one of the entrances was into the restaurant Hoi Polloi, and we did this through the flower shop. And another one being the juice bar, which has a little hatch which opens up onto the street. And this idea that you kind of have these strange juxtapositions create kind of informal and approachable entrances into the restaurant. Inviting you to pass through creates kind of intrigue and curiosity as you move through these spaces. So we designed an openness to encourage the local community to come into these spaces. In particular, the lobby was kind of a moment where we did this. Effectively, we created here a hybridity between a hospitality space and a workspace. One of the key design moves was this large central table in the front of the lobby space, which works as a visual anchor for a multitude of different activities. So during the day, young entrepreneurs would be kind of working there, meeting clients, sitting on laptops, and then around 5, 6 o'clock, people would start arriving with their cocktails, and there'd be this transition between daytime working into nighttime evening mode. The table was also designed for disassembly with a company called Benchmark. And actually what's really lovely is the new kind of ownership. They have taken the table, taken it away, sanded it down, rounded off the corners and replaced it with new lights. So again, the table in itself has had this kind of hybrid approach to design. And not only a workspace, but the lobby was a lot more than that. It became a place to meet and party and really truly express yourself. I really love these pictures of the Bingo Drag Queen event, which happened in the space. And the space kind of really took on this exciting, dynamic party mode. I think in a sense this project is, in particular, the kind of lobby spaces create a great example of hybrid design that has influenced many of our projects since. So kind of coming up to modern day, this is a project that we just completed last month for Milan Salone, if anyone visited. So alongside interior fit outs, we also do a lot of kind of experimental installations where we like to kind of dive a bit deeper into certain themes that we've explored as a studio. So this is our latest one that we did in collaboration with Design Hotels. And we did it inside one of the hotel lobbies called Straff, which is just near to the Duomo. And the idea here is that we really wanted to further some of the research that we'd been exploring previously about co-creation and exchange in kind of lobby spaces. So we designed this landscape which facilitated unexpected interactions and really opened up dialogues between the users. So consisting of 16 modules, the idea is that these could be rotated and reconfigured into different configurations and capable of kind of assembling into much larger, endless configurations. These shifts created kind of changing landscapes each day and really invited guests to kind of use them, interact with them in many different ways. Visitors were also invited to leave their mark or a trace onto the surface of the installation. So we asked them to leave thoughts or hopes or words or ideas or symbols writing onto the landscape to really become part of the ever-evolving story of this landscape. The materiality was chosen quite intentionally to be something, because almost, again, an in-between material, something that's not traditionally used in furniture making, slightly more architectural. We really wanted to foreground the installation's form rather than the material. So they're kind of like a hard, compressed sheet. And as this title suggests, this kind of idea of a space between, this installation sits between a multitude of ideas, between city and hotel rooms, between this idea of home and away. It brings together different people, so local and the global, in a zone that kind of sits between their two worlds. It can spark creativity, self-expression, and the sharing of ideas. And the idea being that this hybrid is a real catalyst for creativity. So I guess sticking with the kind of, again, the hotel theme, this is a project we did several years ago called At Six in Stockholm. And I guess the hybrid here is this idea of an art gallery and hotel. So working very closely with an art curator, the process we went through was well beyond that of a traditional one where you add artwork at the end. The idea being that the art and the architecture were very much in a strong dialogue to one another throughout the spaces. So key spaces were designed in collaboration with an art curator, and so we made sure all of the pieces and the art commissions really worked with the architecture. Note, for example, the stairs is the same material and marble as the sculpture by Joan Plenza. The artworks placed in the hotel felt very, very different from, say, a traditional art gallery space, which is very white. So actually this idea that the art and the architecture really harmonized together. Again, another example, this is a piece by artist Richard Long, and it's been intentionally framed in the stair architecture. I guess we kind of spoke about this idea of a hotel being a quite unique space. You're away from home, people might be more susceptible and open and willing to experience new things. So in this case, you wouldn't typically expect to see a world-class art collection in like this kind of environment. So we're kind of opening it up to experience something new for the hotel guests. So I think just to summarise on this, At Six is a particular kind of hybrid where hospitality and art have been given the same or equal level of importance. There's a very careful integration of artwork into the spaces, and the way the interiors respond creates a very unique experience for those staying there. This is a workspace project that we, again, completed about couple of months ago. We spend on average, I think it's a third of our life at work, and so there's a real need nowadays for better and more supportive workspaces. For workspace operator Fora and developer Argent, we were briefed to design this 12-storey workspace in King's Cross. Given the scale of the building, we knew that we had to create kind of intrigue and variety across such a wide range of spaces, and we also knew that we had to design something that was supportive of a diverse workforce. So to begin the process, we started by listing out all of the kind of human needs and experiences that you might need in a modern workspace, and then we mapped them across the building, thinking about adjacencies and where we might want these spaces, considering kind of, specific locations. So what we ended up with was a kind of plethora of different spaces, some mindfulness spaces, which can bring about calm and well-being, larger spaces, which were more about collaboration and social interaction, and then focus spaces, more like the one on the screen, where it was more about kind of private focus working. And I guess what we kind of ended up with was this kind of very rich mix of very distinct personalities for each individual space. So on level 2, we had the wellness suite, which includes a prayer room, a parents' room, and a meditation room. And then we have this very distinct indoor garden, which bridges next to an external terrace. The meditation room on the right-hand side, that is a space that's kind of lined in a crushed lavender wallpaper. So you get this real sensorial experience as you enter into the space. It feels very cocooned. And although this space is quite specifically for well-being, actually you can host gong baths, mindfulness, yoga classes in. Fora actually ended up operating this in quite a few different ways. And then on the ground floor, we've got a cross-programmed dynamic space, which operates as co-working, food and beverage, and events. The conceptual idea of this was an idea of a public square, so it felt like it bled from the outside of King's Cross Estate into the space. We have a fixed bar and perimeter seating around the perimeter, which feels kind of warm and earthy and is very much rooted in the ground. And then overhead, we have this kind of cooler raft, which is like a framework for activity. So basically, the central kind of seating, all of the tables and chairs are on caster wheels, the idea being that they're very light and can be moved away when they want to host the space as a gallery space or an event space. And then at the pinnacle of the building on level 12, we have a suite of meeting rooms and an event space. So our general attitude to workspace design is more that aligned to hospitality, so something that feels very rich and warm and has an elevated experience. I think this kind of overlapping of industries is an important approach to design and creates a more meaningful and richer experience. This is, again, the kind of event space connected to that area. So again, this was kind of designed in a way that could adapt throughout the day. So from work time, daytime working into evening event mode. I think it's worth just saying as well on the Jellicoe, although the space feel very distinct in their character and their identities, actually of some of its parts in totality, there's actually like a hybridity of offers and a lot of overlapping sectors. So you've got hospitality, workspace, and well-being, which really all kind of help to support your everyday life in the office. This is also another project that we just completed. So this is for New Balance. We were tasked to design their new global identity for their flagship stores. And part of the briefing was to allow the New Balance community to not only shop, but inhabit the space and be a space to kind of come and share their passion for both running and for fashion. So we kind of acknowledge that the retail experience is no longer just a place to shop. It has to be a cultural touch point where community, creativity, and commerce can converge. Again, a kind of hybridity of activities. So our brief was to kind of further their ambitions of becoming the most boutique athletic brand in the world. The design narrative for the store was to draw on authentic storytelling and a meaningful retail experience to deepen the connection with the brand. Previously, the store had a bit of a lack of identity and there wasn't much clarity between their performance wear versus their lifestyle wear. So that was very much kind of our approach to design, that we wanted to create really clear zones, almost like shop-in-shop experiences for their different collections as you move through the store. This space is the performance floor. So the idea or the concept being this idea of perpetual motion, the embodiment of that. So we created lots of kind of repeating geometries, sculptural seats, to really kind of get that emotion and movement of sport. So alongside this kind of global concept that we did for London, Tokyo, New York, and Japan, we also kind of wanted to think about this element of locality to give it real authenticity. So for the London flagship, we created an elevated experience for the fitting rooms, and we also created this kind of dedicated run club space. We launched the flagship just before the marathon this year, so it meant the space was kind of very active with medal engraving, run club meets, and social events. I think, again, in the result, this space is kind of not just a hybrid of shop-in-shops, but it's a kind of different elevated shopping experience where it's filled with community, where they can come and share their passions. And then in the basement of the store, we designed this kind of special space to be discovered. So New Balance have a range called Made in UK, which is manufactured locally in a place called Flimby, if anyone knows it. And we really wanted to create a dedicated space for that in the basement. So we wanted something that created a kind of clubhouse feel, felt something that felt very rich in materiality and detail. And then built into these layers are these kind of storytelling Easter egg moments. So, for example, there's an oil painting that is of Flimby, and there's like little portraits of the staff that work in the factory. And for this space, again, we designed in flexibility so that the client could use this space for future events. So again, the central seating can kind of be easily moved away. There's a built-in DJ deck and speakers. Just recently, again, for their kind of marathon launch, they were holding lots of events. This is one they did with still life painting. So we really kind of created a space that was able to host, activities beyond retail. And I just thought it'd be nice to end on a hybrid space that as a studio we use every single day and is very close to home. So this is our canteen space, which is in our studio based just around the corner at St John's Lane. So at the heart of our studio sits the materials library and the canteen. They're probably the most utilised spaces in our studio. We also share the space with 2 other studios, so it's a really lovely place where you get this kind of crossover of overlap of people, which means we have lots of kind of opportunities to converse and meet. And it's very much in line with our studio ethos that creativity starts when other people start talking to one another. This canteen space works more like Type B. So day to day, it functions as a very practical kitchen alongside meeting spaces, but it also takes on lots of other functions. We've hosted dinners, events, life drawing classes, workshops. Yesterday we had a yoga class in here, and it's an extremely simple space with very simple components, so lightweight furniture and curtains, but it really gives us the opportunity to adapt it from workspace to exhibition to hospitality space. So I guess I'd just like to end by summarising on some of the themes that I've spoken about today. I've shared spaces from retail, hospitality, exhibition. However, I hope that I've shown that there are lots of different overlaps in all sectors and that they actually spill into one another to create true new hybrids. The infrastructure to kind of support hybrid design doesn't always need to be super overt. It can be quite quiet and exist within the fabric of the building, allowing for these smooth transitions to happen, which I think, again, creates that kind of authenticity and variety that's needed. In a way, the roles for hybrid design are just to be experimental, and I invite you to consider this in future projects, this idea of creating unusual combinations or juxtapositions, to really embrace the unexpected and the unpredictable, to disrupt and to play, to really create a richer tapestry for our cities and our world. Thank you.